Snow at Heaven's Edge, Chapter 3. The intended effect of her word was more dramatic than she had anticipated. Countless eyes focused on her shrouded face as they waited for an explanation which she could not articulate. "What is this about?" someone shouted. "Is that you, Feng Xiaoyan? I can smell her stench." "It's her, all right. Who else would need to wear a hood and cover her face with a scarf at night?" The crowd burst into raucous laughter. Her face burnt red, and would have caused her further embarrassment had it not been covered, as the man correctly pointed out. Xiaoyan would have preferred to stomp out in rage, but the memory of the dead man was so vivid that she could not leave, especially when she was staring at Miao Dan. He was just as she remembered, standing on top of the makeshift stage the man had made by combining two adjoining tables. His droopy-eyed stare, flowing white beard, small beaked nose, even down to his usually chapped fleshy lips, were all frighteningly present. He stared straight at her with an inquisitive expression. Feng Xiaoyan blinked twice and rubbed her eyes just to make sure. She wanted to walk closer to him to ascertain his identity, but her legs remained planted. How can this be? He should be dead. She found it hard to breathe and felt weak. She fell towards a nearby table, but the men there pushed her to the ground. Xiaoyan pulled back her hood and loosened her scarf in order to suck in air. "Are you all right, child?" he asked, taking a step forward. Blood drained from her face as she scuttered back, trying to avoid his touch. "She must have caught a reflection of herself," someone shouted, and again roaring laughter followed. Xiaoyan's face remained ghastly pale. "Wait," Chen Daming said. "Come, Feng Xiaoyan, tell us what happened." "Him," she pointed. "He's dead. I saw him. His neck. Lips gone, mutilated body by the store." There was another round of thunderous laughter. "Release me, child," Chen Daomen shouted. Xiaoyan realized at that moment that she had both her arms wrapped tightly around his. She released her hold and shuffled behind him. "What nonsense," said the innkeeper. "Is he not here? Flesh and blood before us." "No," Xiaoyan screamed as she fought Chen Daming from pulling her toward the old storyteller. "Child, although I can smell the scent of the coffin pine, I still have a few more stories to tell before then. You cursing me, what is the meaning of this?" Miao Dan asked angrily. "What wrong have I done you?" "Look, he has a shadow," said Zheng Wu, the noodle stand owner. "And a chin, and his heels touch the ground when he walks," added Mo Yi, the tailor. Xiaoyan felt a bit calmer after observing for herself all that the people had pointed out. Still, a ripple of fear remained. No, she whispered. "I personally do not believe this mad wench. However, it might be that someone is hurt. Zhang San and Li Zi, find out what is going on," spat Chen Jing, the magistrate of Wuzheng. The two men rose begrudgingly from their table of wine and meat. As they buttoned their coats and adjusted their hats, San and Si stared daggers at Xiaoyan and spat in her direction on their way out into the blinding whiteness as the storm escalated. Feng Xiaoyan slumped near one of the pillars by the doorway, but her eyes remained fixed on Miao Dan wherever he went. General excitement over Miao Dan's tales transformed into angry reproach of the girl and her lies and wild speculations about what might have transpired. Some accused her of insanity. Others called her spiteful for cursing the honored storyteller and wasting their time with her hoax. In the far corner, Li Xiang grew animated, eyes blazing with excitement and the prospect of some inexplicable mystery imminently unfolding. "I'm going to have a look," said Ling Wuai, putting down his cup. "You believe the girl as well?" asked the wife. "I'll believe what I see," he said with a calm smile. "The girl is very convincing. I do not believe someone who probably has gone through a lot in life could be this skittish without cause. If it is something outside the ordinary, 2 citizen soldiers would need help." As Wuai rose from his seat, so did Li Xiang, but her intentions were too obvious. "Being mute does not mean being invisible," commented Routine. "There's no point in going. You won't be able to follow Wuai Gege. If I were you, I'll sit back down and see what happens from here where it's warmer, brighter, and drier." The child exhaled loudly and sat down, placing her dagger back into her coat jacket. She stared in Feng Xiaoyan's direction. The teenager appeared calmer, but her attention remained on Miao Dan, even as insults continued to fly at her. Li Xiang frowned. "Be very careful, please," Ruting implored her husband. Wu looked at his wife appreciatively. Normally, she would not have said such things, but he understood her concern. He puffed up his chest and gave it 2 thumps with his fist. She laughed at his uncharacteristically exaggerated display of male bravado. He smiled, and with a slight bow to his wife and little friend, Lin Wuai left Tianya Inn. The cold seemed colder than Lin Wuai had remembered. Funny how easily man forgets hardship in comfort. The storm had abated somewhat, but his winter coat was still plastered with the powdery snow. He did not bother brushing it off. All things are cyclical. Before long, snow will fall again. The air was light and enlivening. Wuai did not feel alone despite the silence, save the crunching snow and occasional howl of the wind. He had reached the outer part of town when he made out a woman's hysterical laughter, punctuated intermittently by high-pitched screaming. He stopped to listen more carefully. Another sound, a more familiar tune, metal grinding and screeching in mortal combat. He ran in the direction of battle. Several swordsmen in a white faceless mask surrounded a man in his 40s. A newcomer to the rivers and lakes might make the mistake of helping the lone fighter against his many assailants. Wuai had traversed the pugilistic world long enough to know that tragedies began with good intentions. He watched as the man fought against a numerically superior opponent while protecting the hysterical woman. "Kill him! Kill him!" shouted the woman in between laughs as she danced around the flashing swords and sabers. "Wu Liang, be careful!" the man shouted as he tried desperately to hold on to her hand. "Evil karma! Sinner!" she shrieked. The faceless men were relentless in their attacks. They hampered the lone swordsman by alternately attacking him and the defenseless woman. The woman let out another shriek. Lin Wuai had seen enough. The sound of his sword draw rang like a temple bell. Before the sound waves dissipated, 2 faceless men lay lifeless, while 3 nursed fresh wounds. 2 more faceless men clutched at their now broken blades. "Brother, my name is Ma Xianda, and I owe you my most sincere gratitude." "Then you must thank me properly after I dispatch these fellows for you," Wuai replied as he let his sword loose once more. "Amazing," Ma Xianda admired. The youth attacked every angle, and his superb levitation skills made him difficult to pin. He leapt high in the air and soared across the sky like an eagle, and just as swiftly he would land like a pouncing tiger and lunge at his enemies. Ma Xianda tried to predict the young man's next point of attack, but soon gave up. The rhythm, speed, direction of attack, and strokes varied so much that even an experienced master like himself had trouble keeping up. Lin Wuai's sword reflected the moonlight and gave off a cool, icy blue. This impregnable blur of blue that encircled the young swordsman was all Ma Xianda could see as the speed of attack increased. What a marvelous gift from heaven to be able to witness such a display of talent. "Die!" his wife Ma Wunan shouted. "No, don't touch me." She recoiled as he tried to pull her to him. "Don't you ever touch me again." "Watch out!" yelled Lin Wuai. Ma Xianda raised his sword and deflected the projectiles that flew at his most vital points, head and chest. They made a loud ding before falling onto the snow. The remaining faceless men retreated, taking the bodies of their fallen with them. "Brother Ma, these ruffians fight dirty and have gotten away," he said as he sheathed his longsword. "Let's..." "They're the brocade-clad guards in disguise, but they'll never let you find that out. That's why they hide their faces and retrieve the bodies." "I see. The Imperial Secret Service. What grudge does the government have against you?" "He's a thief, a rebel, a rapist, and a sinner," yelled the woman before falling into another fit of hysterical laughter. Ma Xianda sighed. "My wife has been like this for a good number of years. No matter where we go, we cannot find a cure for her illness. Unfortunately, Brother Ma, you have gone to the wrong town. Wucheng has no famed doctor." Ma Xianda studied Lin Wuai, and after a moment's silence, he retrieved his scabbard. "Thank you, young hero." The couple walked into the night. Wu Liang's sharp laughter remained a little longer before the howling wind completely obscured it. Lin Wuai looked toward the dark sky. A poem he had heard long ago came to mind. "The heavenly star to the north tonight shone. The path of a hero must be walked alone. Through the foothills of jade until the ivory steps fade. Therein lies our heroes unmade." The 2 village peacekeepers finally returned. Zhang San carried the catatonic Li Si and dropped him onto the floor before collapsing himself. A wave of silence fell over the inn for a second time that night. Zan had recovered enough to ask for wine and hurriedly gulped down the warm bowl of liquor. Wiping away the spillage around his lips, he looked around at the eager, entreating eyes. Calmer now, he began his account. Brother Li and I went eastward, as that was where the supposed body was. But when we got there, we found nothing. He glanced over angrily at Feng Xiaoyan, who glared back. We decided to split up and look around since we were there already. I headed northeast and Brother Li went southeast. That's when I saw... He turned pale once more as he forced himself to recollect whatever horror he had seen. What did you see? Asked the magistrate. Ghost, Zan screamed. The statement brought on an uproar. What exactly do you mean by this? Mumbled the storyteller, Miao Dan. They were everywhere, on rooftops and in the streets. They killed Big Bao and Confucian Chan. What? Big Bao the baker and Chen Xi the scoundrel are both dead? Someone asked. Their bodies, Zan retched. Wait, what happened to Li Si? Innkeeper Chen asked. Wiping his mouth with his sleeves, Zan continued through labored breathing. I don't know. I hid behind a tree to wait for them to pass, and that's when I saw one of them turn around. He had no face. The next thing I know, I was running as fast as possible to find Li Si, but when I got there, he was sprawled across the steps in front of the rice store. That's when I saw the bodies. He heaved, and the encircling crowd quickly backed away, but seeing that he brought nothing up, soon converged again. How did they die? Could you describe how the wounds looked like? Inquired the stocky, middle-aged man who clutched tightly to his large warhammer. No. Zan said, looking rather distant. There wasn't much left. The baffled crowd fell silent. What do you mean? The bodies of Big Bao and Confucian Chan were chewed up, as if they were eaten. The bright lights of the inn spilled into the street. Ma Senda stared at the sign while Ma Wunyang mumbled to herself. He smelt the food and the liquor and felt the warmth of the fire within, but made no motion to enter. Then, as if overcoming some internal debate, he stared at his wife's sad, tired face and gave her hand a soft, gentle squeeze. The woman sneered and dug her nails into his hand. He silently bore the pain and led her into Tanya Inn. I'm going to kill the wench, shouted the tall man as he chased a teenage girl with a heavily disfigured face. The crowd was no friendlier and cast obscenities at the adolescent. After a long sequence, the tall man caught a fistful of the girl's hair and dragged the girl toward the entrance. Masenda had not expected such drama. His initial impulse was to reach for his blade, but before he had a chance to act, the tall man let out an agonizing scream and clutched his hand. Blood dripped profusely from a long gash. A small girl stood between the man and the teenager. The dagger she held glimmered in the fire. Dirty. Now my dagger is dirty, she pouted. You little whore, the wounded man bellowed. He took a step toward the girl when a small cup flew at his head, knocking him unconscious. A beautiful woman with marvelous levitation skills slept next to the little girl in a single bound. Whoever lays a hand on Miss Feng will have it severed, she said with a strong voice that seemed to resonate forever and hinted at the depth of her qi. How dare you interfere with her town's affairs? Questioned Chen Jin. Shifting blame would not solve your problem. Whoever killed those men are still out there, replied Lin Ruting. Until someone finds objective evidence tracing the killers to Miss Feng, she will stay with me. Ha! That's perfectly fine for you, an outsider, to come and meddle with our affairs. I suppose you have something to do with those ghosts as well, said Chen Yun, Chen Jin's son. The inn was ablaze with discontented clamor. What further proof do you seek? That bitch is vicious and vindictive. She has planned this all along, and now she has caused the deaths of 2 men and maybe a third, cried Peng Gu, a shabbily dressed man with a goat-like beard. Yes, I do want all of you dead, all of you, screamed Feng Xiaoyan. The crowd gave a collective gasp in disbelief at the audacity of the disfigured girl. General opinion at that moment was that her ugliness was a manifestation of her malignant nature, and her display of anger seemed to alienate what little support she had. To be so forthright with her frustration and loathing was unbecoming. There was simply too much hubris in those defiant words. To some, those were already irrefutable proof of guilt. Zansan had regained consciousness and led the mob in demanding blood. Chopped the slut into 1,000 pieces. A fervent few grabbed their weapons and ran toward the adolescent. Despite her brave words, Feng Xiaoyan retreated behind Lin Ruting at the sudden onslaught. Sensing the oncoming violence, Chen Daming pleaded on deaf ears for them to stop, or at the very least carry their axe outside. Stop! Lin Ruting leapt into the air and glided across the room, knocking the first wave of attackers to the ground. A second wave of attackers readied themselves. She ignored them. Are you girls hurt? She asked. Li Xiang shook her head. Ruting turned her attention to the semicircle of men that now formed around her. Ma Senda recognized the danger of the situation. The young woman's attack was far too lenient. Her mercy toward the initial wave of attackers empowered rather than dissuaded them. These third-rate fighters thought she was nothing more than a beautiful girl with fancy techniques and lacked the strength to finish the fight. But the sword behind her back looked menacingly enough to temporarily halt their advance. If there's anything that can overcome cowardice, it is inebriated bravado. Ah! Yelled one of the fallen men who suddenly discovered he was still of this world, though his pride had already sunken into the necks. His war cry rallied the others into attacking. The man with the serpent spear struck first as the length of the instrument gave him a false sense of security and strength that the wielders of shorter weapons did not have. The thrust had strengthened it, and the sharp blade swooshed into the air. The young woman was quicker. In a show of speed and accuracy, she wrapped a slanted hand around the wooden handle and pulled. The spearman lost control of his weapon. The young woman swung the blunt end of the long spear in a defensive arc at the throng of ruffians, knocking several of them down. The rest backed away. Her attack was harder this time, and accompanying the bruised egos of men were mouthfuls of broken teeth and dislocated jaws. Even so, some persisted. Meng Hua, a giant with a pair of maces, waited for the end swing of the spear before attacking. He jumped in the air, and with a loud roar that rivaled the fiercest lions, brought the pair of maces down on the woman's back. He tightened his grip as he braced for impact on his descent. The young woman spun around and leapt backward in one-foot motion. The spear had left her hand, causing the big man to fall to his side. He landed sideways onto a wooden table, shattering it. The spear, with its bladed head forcefully buried within the aged wood of a large pillar, continued to twang loudly. Meng Hua's sacrifice was not completely in vain, as Ling Ruting now stood more than 20 feet from the two young girls. Several ruffians converged on Li Xiang and Feng Xiaoyan. One raised his sword for a slash, while the other drew back for a thrust. Neither expected the woman to possess such speed. She covered the distance in a blink and wrestled the sword from the man before he could bring the blade down. She sent him flying with a well-placed kick in the chest. A loud clang rang across the tavern as she deflected the thrust and broke the tip of the assailant's sword. She whipped her blade around and smashed the spine of her sword into the man's wrist, crushing it. She had their attention. My martial art is neither proficient nor puissant, and so I can only trust that the brave warriors present will not try to take advantage of me while my husband is away. Thank you all for being gentle in our little exhibition, and if any of these two youngsters dare be impolite or cause anyone any trouble, please let me know, and I will properly educate them. Thank you once more for not meddling in our business. At the conclusion of her short speech, she lifted the sword to eye level and ran 2 fingers down the back of the blade. A good sword indeed, someone heard her say, and with those words, she made a diagonal cut in the air. The remaining ruffians fell back and let out a sigh of relief when they realized she was merely testing the blade. The respite was short-lived when the blade shattered and fell onto the cement floor, jangling as if the fine metal were nothing more than cheap copper coins thrown at beggars. Ling Ruting strode back to her table with her 2 companions. The inn fell silent again except for the moans and groans of the fallen ruffians. Chen Daming gazed at the beauty, and when he finally wrenched his sight from her, he noticed a new guest. Ma Senda, throughout the central plains, one big mess, was scribbled on the wall. While you, Innkeeper Chen stopped short of using profanity as his perceptive eyes caught hold of the large sword at the man's side. The mess, the thought finally caught up to him. Sons of whores, he yelled. Come on, pay up, you wretched thugs, pay up! He screamed as he went from man to man demanding reparations for the damage. Hey, you've made it to the end. If you like it so far, please subscribe and like. This lets me know I'm on the right path. And if you can't wait for the next installment of Snow at Heaven's Edge, then head on over to Amazon and read the story in its entirety for free if you have Kindle Unlimited. Alternatively, you can check out Dreamweaver and Duo on Mount Taiyan as well. Both of these stories are done and available for free here on YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. If you want to support me, please consider going to my Ko-fi and being a member. Have a great day.